Socially radical. Socially radical. Socially radical. Socially radical. Socially radical. Socially radical. Guitarist. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Socially Radical Guitarist. Song you heard just now was Violence by the band Ladybread. And yes, we have them here today. So just before I begin the conversation with them, just want to go through the disclaimer. Anything that I say or anything that my guests say on the show are the respective opinions of the guests and the host. They have nothing to do with Radio Waterloo, any of its subsidiaries, or any of its affiliates. So no, try as you might, you cannot sue public radio over this program. And yes, while the African and Caribbean Inclusion Center is sponsoring this show, the respective opinions of the host and the guest are simply the opinions of the host and the guest. They have nothing to do with the African and Caribbean Inclusion Center, any of its subsidiaries, or any of its affiliates. So no, don't sue the nonprofit either. Support the nonprofit, especially support the drive for full inclusion, full integration, and full equality. When African and Caribbeans in particular come to Canada, and refugees in general come to Canada, they should be fully integrated, fully included, and fully equal. And that is the goal of that mission, that drive. So please support. And yes, we have our guests here, the ones that just played that beautiful song, Ladybread. How are you guys doing?
Good. Hey, Christian, thanks for having us on.
What's going on?
Hey.
All right. So, let's just begin with, just a question. How did you guys get together? How did you form? And, just a brief introduction on the musical backgrounds of everybody.
Yeah. You want me to start?
Yeah, you actually.
Well,
you were there before all of us.
It's a long story.
Me and Mike and our drummer Matt, who's not here with us today, we all went to high school together. But I actually didn't start playing music or guitar until after college. But I played a lot after college. I was practicing a lot, and I moved back to New York. And at that point, one of our friends that I had gotten to high school with said, if you want to do anything musically related, you need to reach out to this guy, Mike. And so I texted him, said, do you want to jam sometime? Like, do you want to play? And we started jamming a lot, and that's how I got hooked up with him. And then Rick, you came a little bit after that, I think?
Yeah, mine was a little different. So while I was living in the city, I got introduced from a friend of a colleague for someone that sets up these off-Broadway plays in New York City. And it turns out the one that I did, Mike was here to do music, and apparently I was too. So we kind of just met up through that. And then he said, oh, I have an indie rock band. You should, join us, do some jam sessions and stuff. And then it took me, I think, more than a year or something to actually follow up on that. And I ended up becoming part of the band. So
yeah, I mean, like Ricky said, we had established like a really great musical connection beforehand, like on these projects we worked with her name was Nako Adedwaji, who's she's a playwright out of New York. And so, yeah, we were sort of co-music directing, and I think we're all real heavy into like improvisation is sort of where we come from musically. I mean, at least, Matt's not here to chime in, but from high school, like that's where I started playing music, was just like sort of jamming with him in his basement, just setting aside a couple hours with like no goal really other than to make a bunch of noise. So once I established that kind of connection with somebody that I feel like we really understand each other musically and we can just sort of groove and vibe, I want you in my band. And that's how it went.
Nice. Which high school did you go to?
It's called Cold Spring Harbor High School. It's on Long Island.
Oh, Cold Spring Harbor High School. Is that a public school?
Yes, it is.
Oh.
The claim to fame of the town is Billy Joel actually has an album named after the town.
Wow. That's something to take credit for sure.
So yeah, we have a big musical lineage to live up to, I guess.
Yeah.
So how do you write songs? Do you do it as a group consciously? Is it a result of jamming, or is there someone in charge of that?
Typically, like I lead the charge, but I think things are starting to shift. As we sort of started with this like changing cast behind me, I guess like part of the story that you were getting so far is that, it was me and Matt were jamming, and then, you know, I met Ricky, I met Teddy. So we were playing shows where we had like different backing musicians coming in and out. And really now that we have this core 5 group of guys that we've been playing together for, I'd say about 3 or 4 years, it just feels really solid, and we really have like, you know, a good musical connection. So initially it was like I was taking songs that I had started writing in like high school and just continuing to develop. And I would bring them to the guys, or, you know, they were already sort of finished, and I would say, you know, jump on and add your part. But I think now as we're working our way up into this next album, there's a lot more like collaboration, where there are songs that I'm showing to the guys that are in very early stages. So there's a lot more opportunity for us to like write them in tandem.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. I mean, most of the songs, you know, have already been established, but for newer stuff, you know, Mike will give us the bare bones, and then we'll add all the flavor and color to it to really make it flourish. So
yeah, I mean, I can't stress enough like how important it is to me that like what they add. I'm very much like Ricky said about sort of bare bones, is I'll really write. I'll actually start on the acoustic guitar usually, just because it's easy to pick up, put down at my leisure, you know, and I'll write just the structure where I'll have melody and chords. But I don't like, you know, give Ricky like a sheet music and say, here's the keys part. I want him to bring what he has to the table. You know, everyone's got that in them. It's someone's going to surprise me with something I wouldn't have thought of, you know, during a jam session, and that's what I want.
Yeah, yeah, you definitely bring a lot of flavor. I've looked at some of your live performances. All of you are very talented, very, have very good mastery of your music, of your instruments.
I think Silence is actually like unique for us in that it was the first song we wrote. We found a recording of like the synthesis of it, or the genesis of it, I guess. That like I was saying, usually I come to them and I say, here's the song. The riff, the opening riff that you hear on the song started in a jam session. And we all just sort of took a moment and said, we like that, we want to build on it. And so this song's really important to me for that reason, is that it feels like it belongs to all of us a little bit.
Beautiful, beautiful. Your music, it seems to be very socially conscious. Like you touch on a lot of sensitive topics. Is that like intentional, or just the mood you're always in when you're writing?
I think it's mood based. I think like I never really set out to say anything when I start writing, and I sort of let the topic find itself like as I go. You know, for the most part, I actually like really work with syllables before I find words. And then once I find the word, I like, you know, for example, like this song, like I heard violence and I said, okay, if I'm going to talk about violence, I gotta like, you know, that's a heavy topic, you know, I can't back down from it now. I'd say that we definitely have sort of more socially conscious music coming forward. A lot of the stuff from our previous album is, you know, it's older music. It's stuff I was writing in high school, and it's music I'm very proud of and is very meaningful, but it comes from a much more, you know, sort of like closed in introspective space. You know, it comes from a place of depression, or a place of, you know, personal issues, things like that. It's you know, I guess it's a little like self-indulgent in that way. But, you know, a song like Violence is more about, you know, my interpretation of things. And that's always how I see music in general. You know, I'm not writing a treatise. I'm not, you know, going to change the world necessarily, though, you know, music certainly does. But I feel like my job as an artist is to just reflect on what I'm presenting. So I can really only give like my opinion on it, and then even how I present it is just going to be interpreted however, you know, somebody else takes it through their filter. So I just try to do the best and be as honest as I can about how I feel.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. It's like
well, you know, the best artists definitely put their heart and soul into it, and they put their emotion into it. And when it comes from personal experience, it's always that much better. You know, I wanted to go into, you know, talking a little bit about your career, how you felt about it, but, you know, I just have to talk to Rick about his, you know, keyboard playing. Who taught you?
Hell yeah.
Who taught you?
You should.
That should be the whole interview.
Yeah, before we get into there's a video of, and It's a very clear video. There's a video of Ricky recording that piano solo in the studio, and our bassist Ben like stands up and just starts jamming, and I'm jamming, and we're all like, "This is it, this is it." So I'll let you take it from there. But when he played that on the recording, we were so pumped and happy for us and for him, and it was great. Yeah, tell us about that.
I'm not sure how I came up with. I think like some of my inspirations from my classical piano background, because I went to a conservatory for about 10 years, took lessons to learn this, that, and I eventually stopped so I could just expand and focus on other genres of music, such as, you know, pop, punk, R&B, jazz, different stuff, and ended up Ladybread. But for that solo, I think I had a lot of surprisingly Debussy and Ravel inspiration, at least for the second half of the solo. In the first half, I'm not sure where like that riff came in my head. It might have been during some rehearsal where I heard something from, you know, Mike or Teddy or Ben, and I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. Then I started, you know, kind of riffing over it. You know, the way I like to structure the music that I write is I'll start with sometimes even random notes. Sometimes I'll start with like a fully structured chord, and then I'll try to go somewhere else and then go somewhere else, even if it doesn't make sense. And then from those, you know, random places, you'll start to put the pieces together to make them actually flow into some sort of story. And that's how you really get something that's concrete that people don't expect. So that's kind of, you know, what I was going with on the solo right there. I don't think it went out. So, you know.
Oh man, people are going to be talking about that as soon as they hear it. Definitely.
Yeah.
So especially musicians that can hear it, you know. Yeah, so conservatory, that's pretty crazy. Yeah, you must, you know, feel pretty grateful to be able to get that kind of, you know, musical training.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate. My, you know, parents, you know, immigrated, you know, to the US, you know, not too much money, but they still were able to afford my passions and were able to grow it over the decades. So I'm super, super thankful for that, because I mean, if you don't grow what you like and you can't make money off of it, you can't, you know, be super successful, right? So yeah, so here I am with Ladybread. So eternally happy for that.
Yes.
You know.
So yeah, where did your parents immigrate from?
From Haiti, actually. So
oh, Haiti.
It's like they are. Yeah. You know.
Wow, definitely.
You know,
Yeah.
no problem.
When you get out of a place like that, you work hard. You definitely do.
Oh yeah.
Everyone,
they all work hard, and they, you know, instilled it in me. And I'm like, I'm a non-BSer. I'll make ends meet, do what you got to do. So
yeah,
with this band, that definitely comes into play. You know, we don't have shows too often as of yet, even though we're still growing and, you know, making things happen. But, you know, we still put it out there. You know, if it has to be done, we'll do it. So
yeah. It's great that you're putting your soul, and that actually goes into what I was gonna ask next. How does everybody feel about your career so far? Do you feel that audiences receive your performance as well? And if not, or I mean, if you feel like, you know, they could be more excited, what are you expecting to change?
I think like we're sort of like in this transitionary period right now where, you know, one of the reasons I sent you the song and we've been sending it around is, you know, we did this great successful crowdfunder with Plaid Dog Studios. And we got to give a shout out to Brian Fennelly, who produced the track and is going to help us produce the rest of the album. And we're really hoping that'll get us, you know, some buzz. And, you know, we get a lot of positive feedback at the shows, but we sort of hit this plateau where we've reached out to everyone we know, and they all seem to dig it. But we're trying to get on other people's radar now. And so we really want people to anticipate this album. I think that would be, you know, the best thing for us, is that ideally there's somebody who hasn't heard us before that come March or April or whenever the mastering is done is really excited to hear what else we have to say.
Yeah, I think there's like a lot of faith in the ability and the vision and the talent of everyone in the band, and how we mesh cohesively. And as Mike said, I think that we're confident in our abilities, we're confident in the music that we make and the shows that we have, but we're looking to kind of expand our fan base beyond that, because we think we have something to say as a group, and we'd like to have audiences receive that as much as possible.
Yes, well, I believe that your message is definitely worth listening to, especially after hearing, the quality of all of the musicians, especially the just how tight all of you are as a band. It's definitely something to appreciate. Look for them live. Look for them live. They're on YouTube.
Yeah, we actually, if you'll give us a second to pitch, so we got a show next week, and there's a live stream. This venue, a Lower East Side New York venue, is called Arlene's Grocery, a great spot, and they stream most of their shows. And so, if there's anyone in Ontario that wants to check us out, you can get the live stream link. They usually put it up a couple days before.
And not only is it's a high, like I was very impressed when I first saw it. It's like a 3-camera live stream. I don't know how they do it really, but it's a nice production that they do.
Good stuff.
Well, I have you here for shameless plugs, so
Great.
go right ahead. Yes. What's the final message you want to give to people in Canada about your music, or just in general?
Yeah, I guess that's sort of a heavy question, but I think really just that we want people to know how important music is to us, that it's more than just like we want to get famous, or we want to just like jam with friends, like it really is like a lifestyle for us, in that it has a lot of meaning. Like if I don't play music, like if I don't jam with these guys for a couple of weeks, I get very depressed. Like I'll spiral, like I can tell the difference between like when I'm living, musically, and when I'm just living, and that's really what we're trying to put forward in the music, that this is a real passion for us, that this is, we put a lot of thought into it, and we really want you to enjoy what we're doing.
Yeah, I think music is magical and transcendent, and I think that this is a band that tries to capture those two elements, being transcendent and magical, and having something special, a special quality to it, and we hope that comes through in the music, and we hope that people appreciate that, and we feel something special from them, and they feel something special from us as well.
That's a beautiful, beautiful message. So we're going to be going to the intermission. That'll be the end of the interview. But the intermission will be a song that Ladybread picked. It's from one of their previous albums, Ladybread. What's the song we're going into the intermission with?
The song's called Ladybread Eisley. It's off of our first EP, self-titled EP, Ladybread. And it's, I think, collectively one of our favorite songs off of that, one of our favorites to play live too. So hope you enjoy it.
All right, perfect. Ladybread Eisley. We'll be going to the intermission, and then we'll be back to do the political segment. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
How do I tell her? Well, maybe if I shout it out, I'm surrounded by the sum of all doubt. It's overrated how we work so goddamn hard. It gets vexing how complex these things are. My eyes are open and closed at the same time. Oh, the heart is fickle, but you can't just change your mind. Surprise her with some random kindness I implore. Oh, it's pointless to bicker. She don't want you anymore. Flirting with desertion, well, if it
Welcome back to Socially Radical Guitarist. The song you heard just now was Ladybread Ashley from the eponymous named album Ladybread from the band Ladybread. Thank you once again for coming on. Beautiful song, beautiful music, and 32 monthly listens is unacceptable. So please show that support and listen more, especially if you like indie, because this is definitely a solid indie band. Now, let's do the news for the week. Now, I admit, I haven't had enough time to get into this recent trial to, look at the background of this hate crime allegation that was made by Jussie Smollett. Jussie Smollett apparently was convicted by a judge for having orchestrated a fake hate crime. He maintains his innocence, of course, and while I don't have much on what was going on, I didn't really look at the transcripts or any of that. I apologize. I'll get back to you later on when I have more that I can say on the issue. But let's just be straight and let's just be frank. Is there the likelihood, is it even likely that Jussie Smollett got a fair trial in the United States? Is it possible for Africans to get a fair trial in the United States? I would definitely say not likely, especially considering the history, considering the fact that there are thousands of political prisoners in U.S. jails being used as slave labor. It's quite frankly not a credible judgment, just on the basis of the political system and the generally reactionary judges presiding over those kinds of arguments. Now, there's a lot to get into. A lot of signs of the settler colonies really showing their face, really kind of exposing themselves, making themselves more visible in their contempt. Canada and the United States both issued travel bans on a variety of southern African countries, including Namibia, Zimbabwe, South Africa. And these travel bans are still in effect, even though the Omicron variant has been found in Europe, found in Hong Kong, and found in South America as well. So, does this bigoted mistake sound familiar? Remember, liberals were calling out Donald Trump for doing the China ban, where he simply singled out China for the virus and banned flights from China, even though China had already banned international flights abroad themselves. But he did that. And the liberals were calling him out as racist. Even Governor Chris Cuomo was pointing out the fact that the virus is European and that a lot of the people that were sick, diagnosed sick, came into New York from Europe, from Italy, from other countries. They still implemented that travel ban. Trump was still touting it, saying, hey, look, you're calling me a racist, but this saved a lot of lives. Well, no, it didn't. You just shifted where the virus was going to spread from because it had already spread it too far, too many different directions, and there wasn't a universal travel ban. It was simply targeted for geopolitical, racial reasons. So you remember, of course, the liberals were right to call that out. Of course, that's really what it was. It was just naked racism. There wasn't any scientific basis for simply singling out China when the virus had already spread around the world. But we called it what we called it. South Africa, to their credit, discovered the Omicron variant, but the variant was discovered in many other places: Hong Kong, Europe, South America. And yet, for some reason, Canada made it a point to simply single out South Africa and the Southern African countries. And, of course, you see people on the CBC saying, listen, we've got to, put a lid on the virus from where it's coming from. But it's not just coming from there. And the virus is all over the world, mutating. And another thing to note is the fact that while Africa is turns out to have done much better as a whole at managing the pandemic than Canada or especially much better than the United States, it's still struggling from the fact that there's what Julius Malema would call vaccine apartheid, where white people get special privileges because of their relationship to imperialism, the country's relationship, Western countries. They've hoarded, robbed, and looted minerals, valuable primary resources from Africa, America, Asia, and kept it all to themselves. The ruling class, I mean. And have done it in order to improve standards of living, which is really just them handing over the scraps from their stolen possessions in small token tax gestures, charity gestures, things like that, while they hoard the wealth as the ruling class. And that creates these minute differences in conditions. And yeah, it can seem large and significant at the time. But, these countries are rapidly catching up. And it's actually come in line with the greater expansion of the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative. An interesting thing to note. And the BRICS Bank, which the NATO-aligned countries have decided to oppose, and which South Africa, incidentally, is a founding member of, the BRICS Bank. So there's a lot more going on than just trying to do what they can to stop the pandemic from getting worse. A lot of geopolitical and racist epithets being made here. So you see that the country is essentially just showing its face. Settler colonies are really laying themselves bare. And this will actually intersect with the common character of all of the fascist states that emerged shortly after World War I, Italy first, and then Japan, Japan's consolidation and love and adoration for the emperor, and of course, the rise of the Third Reich. What these three countries had in common, if this is going to be a very eye-opening point to make, but what all three of these countries had in common was that they were all colonizers. And the tripartite alliance was essentially a colonial alliance. And that actually ended up being the common defining feature of all three of these fascist states. And Nazi Germany themselves were inspired in Operation Barbarossa by the United States and their colonial expansion westward, Manifest Destiny. There were many documents within, Nazi archives, German archives, that showed that what they were trying to do was to expand east the way the Americans expanded west. And they actually were building settlements within Russia, as well as concentration camps, just like the United States. That's where they learned it from. That horror, that devastation, that atrocity, that every school makes it a point for people to learn and to remember, was inspired by the United States and their Western expansion. And the term final solution was actually not first used by the Nazis. That was originally a term from Canada. When dealing with the Indian question, what would be the final solution to that? So that's why the reaction by a US-led NATO alliance has been so explicitly racist when dealing with how to deal with the pandemic, even if it's not within the country's own interests. It's not within the country's own interests to just hoard vaccines to themselves and pretend that the rest of the world doesn't exist and that these other countries don't need vaccinations. Although you'd be hard-pressed to try to get a thief to politely return anything that they have stolen. But that is what's necessary for this devastating pandemic to end. But of course, a thief that so brazenly stole the wealth and the treasure of Africans, Asians, and South Americans would not so easily return such stolen wealth. And that's the paradigm that they live in. And in Canada, this Summit for Democracy, an incredibly shameless summit. And these geopolitical moves to try to undermine BRICS, undermine basically the anti-imperialist struggle among varied countries in order to improve their economic situation. It's also coming in line with, the emergence of more powerful communist countries, more communist parties within the countries that are facing colonialism. For example, Morocco, there was massive protests led by communist students against fees, against the occupation of Western Sahara, a lot of known, deeply entrenched issues, the emergence of the Communist Party of India, Marxists, of course, their control of Kerala, and their rebound throughout the country, and the known recognition that it was a communist movement that won the victory in the farmers' protests in their struggle against the reactionary BJP government. All of that ends up intersecting, and the inherently fascist state of settler colonialism ends up showing its face. Like, for example, this selective travel ban implemented by a supposed steward for reconciliation, the liberal, Justin Trudeau. But if actually you remember, not even very long ago, he was caught in a party, blackface Trudeau. And that's really who he is on the inside. That's kind of the underlying character. And there was a video posted up about indigenous struggles that a comrade, Alex Reed, had posted. And he had said something about like trying to caution maybe indigenous people interested that are going to watch the video not to look at the comments. They're highly racist, highly toxic, and highly damaging. I think that it's important for people to really see what the underlying character of these countries really is. Because you had comments on these videos like, oh, so they want to get the land back so they can be lazy on it. Things like that. They also basically had comments about, I saw a comment where they were calling them savages, where it didn't sound very different in their characterization of them as what was seen in the Declaration of Independence. Might have been looking at someone came back from 200, 300 years ago to write while committing a genocide. And it kind of reminds me of that CBC News reporter going up and to ask, Jagmeet Singh, isn't it going to cost a lot to, fix the water supply? I mean, are we going to really have the money for this? And maybe like one of the 10th richest countries in the world, she was saying something like that. And of course, Jagmeet Singh had said, look, if this was happening within Toronto, would you be saying the same thing? If essentially, it's essentially a poisoned water supply. Essentially, they're poisoning the water supply. If they leave it like that kind of negligence. And considering it's the Canadian government, it's intentional. Any deliberate act like that, they had poisoned the meat before. Shortly after Confederation, the MPs had made it a point to poison meat. Now they're poisoning the water supply. And this lady was saying, oh, can't we just keep it going? It might be too expensive to stop. Really, it was a genocidal comment. It was quite shocking to hear. And it stuns and amazes me how many white Canadians can listen to that and not feel perturbed, not feel shocked, not feel like disgusted with themselves after hearing that. I'm always amazed. What makes it about Indigenous that they're not entitled to water? There's certain expenses that have to be paid. When we have a universal healthcare program, we wouldn't come. It wouldn't be considered to be acceptable to say that particular person can't get healthcare. So why is it acceptable for there not to be clinics, infrastructure, and clean water going into reserves? Obviously, like, we know the answer. They were caught. Hundreds of children in mass graves. And that was done during the 70s, not that long ago. People are still alive that were around during this genocidal escapade. Many of them are still alive, still on the loose, still on the run. Mass criminals. And of course, the current sitting prime minister is the son of a genocidal maniac who made that a point and who publicly said that he was proud that he had suppressed Indigenous culture to the point where many of them were complaining to him in English. That's unbelievable. And that's the actual legitimate face of settler colonialism. It is a form of it's a really reactionary tactic. It's the most brutal tactic. And it was first initiated by absolute monarchies to colonize, invade, steal, murder everybody there, and then just take what they needed. What they wanted. Not even what they needed, what they wanted. The U.S. implemented that strategy firsthand after progress from absolute monarchy to fascism. The world's first fascist republic. Nazi Germany, inspired by that. Inspired by a need to colonize the Russian Indians. And to initiate Operation Barbarossa, an expansion westward. And to use Jews as a scapegoat and throw them into concentration camps, along with the communists and along with the disabled and along with racialized groups. It's Italy wanting to get their Roman Empire back, colonizes Africa. Japan, believing in the glory of their civilization and society and using their emperor at the helm to colonize Asia. Fascism is a political articulation of the goal of settler colonialism to deal with internal crisis. And that's the nature of the struggle that people have to rectify themselves with here. In Canada, political rights were granted to the Indigenous after they waged violent militant struggle and after the Quebecers initiated violent militant struggle. And then we ended up with constitutional monarchy in 1982. Very recently, not very long ago. So we still really have a lot of the birthmarks of fascism. And in order to actually progress, we're going to have to do much more than that. We have to decolonize, become a republic. We have to reclaim the resources and the minerals for the masses, and the indigenous have to have self-determination. Otherwise, it's either one way or the other. We either get better or we get worse. But this is the harsh reality of what we're facing right now. And with that, I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to go off a topic and dedicate this song to my brother. This is going to be a very silly song. He's probably going to think I'm abusing my radio privileges, but listen, our organization pays for this time slot, and by God, I'm going to use it however I like. So, if you want to explain yourself about why I thought this would be a good recommendation for you, you're going to have to come on. So this is for you, Chris Goma, by David Glen Eisley and Bob Kulick. The song is Sweet Victory. So with that, we'll have the outro, we'll have Sweet Victory, and then that'll be the end of the show. We'll see you next week. Socially radical. Socially radical. Socially radical. Socially radical. Socially radical. Socially radical. Guitarist.
Winner takes all. It's the thrill of one more kill, the last one to fall. We'll never sacrifice their will. Don't ever look back on the world closing in. Be on the attack with your wings on the wind. Oh, the games will begin, and it's sweet, sweet, sweet victory. And it's ours for the taking. It's ours for the fight. In the sweet, sweet, sweet victory. And the waters has to fall. The winner takes all. You don't win no silver. Ooh, you only lose the gold. You push with a fever. Oh, your time keeps tolling on. Against all the odds, against all your pain, your back's on the wall with no one to blame. While hearts won't be tamed, and it's sweet, sweet, sweet victory. Oh, yeah. It's It's sweet.